Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at controlled opposition and useful idiots. Now, useful idiots is simply a term that Lenin used to describe ignorant people that helped him with his agenda. And we can use this term, useful idiot, to describe anybody who helps the status quo stay the status quo. And what does that include? Well, everybody who eats cooked food and cannot admit that there's something wrong with it is basically going to be a useful idiot if they go around trying to defend their cooked food eating. So the vast majority of us are useful idiots when we use this term in this context. Remember, let's keep things simple. We're either getting reconnected or we're getting distracted. We either go upstream and realize the original sin, the first mistake we ever made, cooking our food, it destroys the biophotons, we lose one of our senses, now we're senseless, now we only have 5 senses instead of 6. Are we going to do that, or are we going to work downstream and be distracted? Because if we're not getting reconnected, everything else we do is a distraction and allows the status quo to stay the status quo. So John McDougall's stupid start solution is a downstream solution. It doesn't address getting reconnected because you're still eating cooked food. So the point here, if you're eating cooked food and you know you shouldn't, but you're struggling, I understand it. It was the hardest thing I ever did. It's the biggest addiction there is. That's why people run to denial. That's why they come up with excuses to defend their stupid cooked food eating. Well, I live up north and we can't get the food. Well, move, or accept the fact that you're in the wrong place and that you shouldn't do it, and you do the best you can with what you got, and hopefully we can reach the tipping point and then all that will change. I've said this over and over again. I know most people don't understand this. If we don't reach the tipping point, things are never going to change, because there's too many problems that we have to face right now to make this work worldwide, and it's not going to work worldwide until we get enough of us to do it so we reach the tipping point. And then once enough of us do that, we'll have the most brilliant minds in the world solving the problem with what do we do for living in a place we're not meant to live. How do we get food up there to them? Do we build greenhouses? Do we fly it up there? Do we force them to move back down where they're supposed to be? What do we do? Well, by then we'll have the solution. So yeah, you can come up with a lot of reasons why the world can't become raw food overnight. Well, that's not going to happen. Come on, let's think about this. And I know a lot of y'all don't think about any of this, but I've been thinking about this for a long time. 26 years, that's all I do is contemplate and think about the ramifications and how to explain this and make sure I'm covering all the pieces and understanding the simplest way to say things so that we understand this and we can take responsibility. So what do we think about John McDougall? Is he controlled opposition or is he just a useful idiot like the vast majority of people who are cooked food apologists who don't want to admit that there's something wrong with cooking our food? Now, how about controlled opposition? Is that a stretch to even think that he could be controlled opposition? Not if you've been on the hero's journey long enough. You question everybody who could be a distraction as to whether or not they're also controlled opposition. Because controlled opposition is very deceptive. I really don't think John McDougall's controlled opposition, but if he was, I would not be surprised in the least, because that's how good controlled opposition works. Remember, Lenin said, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. So we see controlled opposition everywhere. We see internet shills popping up on message boards. We see useful idiots supporting these people. And we can see controlled opposition going way back to the times of Christ, when Paul was a Roman agent and infiltrated the Essene movement, a raw vegan movement, to bring it down and give his version of what we should do. And like all controlled opposition, they're going to tell us 1,000 things or 10,000 things that are true just to get us to believe in certain lies that they can use to control us. Like it's okay to eat meat. Paul is the first corrupter of the Bible. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. Do a little research on this subject and you'll find dozens of brilliant people who studied the Bible extensively, and they all say Paul's version is not the same as Jesus. Jesus was a raw vegan. They knew not to cook food. They knew to fast to get rid of the residue from that cooked food out of us that he called Beelzebub and Victor Hugo called a serpent. So how do we know when controlled opposition is there? Look how many millions of people believe in a book that's been infiltrated by a Roman agent. And they are totally clueless. And they use this to keep doing stupid things. So we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Remember, they tell you 10,000 things that are true to get you to believe in one that's wrong or whatever. So that's how they get away with it. That's how they trick us. Oh, can't throw that book out. Look, all the good stuff in it. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. Don't throw that out. But look closer to what the Essene movement was all about. The Dead Sea Scrolls. Look into that. These were the sons of light. The rest of the people were the sons of dark. What does that mean? Does it have a connection to biophotons? Of course it does. It does. Of course it does. When you study what ancient people said about what we were like in the Golden Age, it was describing biophotons to a T. And those are destroyed when we cook our foods. Cooking is the fall of mankind. To even think that it's what made our brains grow bigger just shows you how ignorant the vast majority of people are, where we have evolutionary biologists that are so deluded that they come up with stupid theories, and I can't help but think that they're part of controlled opposition. I know how the rulers of the world think. I know there's an idea that's stronger than all the armies in the world. And I know what they're going to do to protect and suppress this knowledge. So they got to attack raw food. They got to make cooked food look like it's what made our brains grow. No, it didn't. The time sequence is all out of whack, and I've explained this in other videos. Our brains doubled in size before we mastered anything. It took us another 1.2 million years before we finally mastered fire. Those two don't coincide. The idiot that wrote that book, Catching Fire, that evolutionary biologist, these idiots have it all backwards. They try to say, well, we've got proof we had fire back then. Not one other person accepts that as proof that we had mastered fire. It doesn't prove it. That's why no one else believes it. But he says, look what I found, and this is what makes me think that that's what made our brains grow. Well, the problem with almost every anthropologist out there and these evolutionary biologists is every one of them are sick. They've got the hunger spell. They're under the hunger spell. Remember what Plato said, whatever deceives men seems to produce a magical enchantment. The vast majority of planet are under the hunger spell. These people doing the research, these anthropologists, these evolutionary biologists, they don't have the most important piece of the puzzle. And I know because I found that piece a long time ago. I've been studying everybody I can look at that thinks they've got the piece. And it's so fascinating to see their version, because you know they don't know the truth. And then you see what they think is the answer. And you go, well, no wonder you can't figure anything out. You don't know the right piece of the puzzle. We're not supposed to cook our food, my friends. And if you want to rationalize it because of the ramifications of what it means, what you're doing, I understand that. And people are going to run to denial. That's just going to be the process. People are going to laugh at it. Remember what Schopenhauer said, all truth goes through these three steps. First, it's ridiculed. I always get a kick out of a fool that writes LOL on there. Of course, I always think of Lao Tzu and what he said about people with low capacity. Laugh out loud. You know, I said before, I like all comments, but please be careful what you write, because it's really a reflection of you, and it shows your ignorance in most cases. But I still appreciate the feedback. I know that I'm going to be perceived in a way that is not my intent. It's not easy to challenge people's belief systems without them trying to find a flaw in what you're doing somehow. And instead of trying to see the logic in what I'm saying, they're looking for anything they can find to attack it and then say, well, there you go. You finally said something I was looking for. Throw it all out. It's okay to eat cooked food. Yes, it is the toughest addiction there is, without any doubt. Yes, addicts run to denial. We shut off our frontal lobe. It's very difficult to learn something when you don't want to learn it, when it threatens pleasures that you think you couldn't live without. And I understand that. It's frightening to think, oh my God, I could never eat another cheeseburger. I'd never have another ice cream sundae. And I'm not even ever saying that. I'm not even saying you have to be 100% raw, because I don't know really the ultimate solution. Do we have to be exactly 100%? my approach in the beginning, if I was president of the world, if I could dictate one law, it would be that we all have to have a minimal biophoton level. And I don't know what that number is. And I don't know if we have to be 100% to maintain it. I would love to have a meter like Dr. Pop has and do a study with people and see what happens when they do 100% raw. He already knows when you do juice fast, it bumps them up to 114,000. So isn't that exciting? That's one reason why you want to do the first of my 3-step process. Because it's the easiest way to deal with these addictions, and then you bump up these biophotons to 114,000. But what would be fascinating is say, okay, let's do this, let's do a study and find out these people stayed 100%, these people added 10% cooked, these people added 20%, et cetera, and then look at the biophoton numbers and see the difference. Now, are you going to be able to tell the difference between 80,000 and 70,000? Depends on how slowly how fast you got there. If it was immediate, you'd know it right away, right? But see, this is the problem with the mistakes we make, is that they're very gradual. It's a drip, drip, drip effect, and it takes a long time for certain symptoms to manifest. In fact, what a lot of people don't understand is many of our systems in our body can do like 10 times what they need to do, which explains why we can abuse them for so long and not to have a symptom happen until 50, 60 years down the road. And think about this. Imagine if you come into life, excuse me, with a system that can do 10 times what it needs to do. So instead of 100%, you got 1,000, because it's 10 times that, okay? Now, let's imagine that you're born and your system is only twice instead of 10 times. So now you're at 200%. So what happens in life is the person who's making the same mistakes, or both making the same mistakes, the person who comes in at 200% 2 times instead of 1,000% 10 times, might start having problems in their 20s and 30s instead of the other person in their 50s or 60s or whatever. You can see how that might work. And then if you're born with genetic defects, you're going to come below 100%, so you're going to come in right off the bat with problems. But the way this whole thing works, and the reason why this is confusing for so much of us, is because we can be at 1,000 and slowly be going down every decade by 100. You see where I'm headed? Or maybe 200. And we might not start out at 10, we might start out at 6. So different people are going to get down below 100 quicker than others. And when we go below 100, that's when the symptoms come. So we have this latent disease that most people don't understand. And then they think disease falls out of the sky, not realizing it's what they've been doing every day of their life, over and over and over and over. And for most of us, it's about 1,000 times a year. So think about that one, my friends. If you've been eating what most people eat, which is not our ideal diet, then you've made about 50,000 mistakes. It's actually like 54,000 something in 50 years. Think about that. That's a lot of mistakes. And no wonder we fall apart when we start reaching that time. Most of the people I coach are from 45 to 55. Actually, 57 is an interesting number I see over and over. And of course, I coach a lot of people 60, 70. I've coached several people 90. But once you get in the 50s, 45 to 50, man, we start going downhill fast because our mistakes accumulate. Remember, everything we do affects us, and those effects accumulate, and are going to be reflected in the condition of what we got. Our physical state, our mental state, our emotional state, and what I call our communal state, which reflects the fact that we are all one. And now we don't have that, so we have a subsequent need for religion and spirituality. Remember, the word religion, root word religio, means to connect. The concept of spirituality is to be one and be connected. And my point is that these are subsequent needs because we've lost our connection, and it's not an automatic. Now we got to think about it. We got to focus on it. So religion and spirituality is a subsequent need that helps a lot of us while we're all on the wrong path. Remember, if we can't reach the tipping point, things are never going to change. So as long as we're on the wrong path, we have these subsequent needs that we have to use or don't use, depending upon what we find works for us. So I never condemn religion. I never condemn spirituality, unless there's parts of it that dispute the fact that we have responsibility, and a lot of it does that. So again, I don't take things personally. You can call me any names you want, but when you start attacking the first mistake, the fall of mankind, and attack raw food, or if you attack juice fasting or water fasting, I'll come to the defense of that truth, because that's what I'm supposed to do. And for me, this is my way of becoming eternal. I'm believing in ideas that were believed in long ago, and they're going to be continued to believe on forever and ever, and all we are is thought and energy, right? So that's how you have eternity, is you share the knowledge we're missing that has been known for 99% of our existence. It's lost knowledge now. It's one of the two forms of ignorance where we don't know we don't know. The other is we got this dang false knowledge in its place. The worst of all the false knowledge is the false belief that cooking's okay. It's not okay. And if you have to eat it, I understand. But please don't run to denial and defend it as if there's nothing wrong with it, because there is something wrong with it. It destroys the biophotons, the thing that makes us feel one, our sixth sense. We're disconnected. So once again, if we're not getting reconnected, we're being distracted, and we're useful idiots as long as we support the status quo. And the status quo wants to remain the status quo. It's going to put up a fight, but we can defeat the status quo if we can get enough of us to get everyone's attention. That's where the first of my three-step process comes into play. I've rambled on way longer than I probably should. I apologize for those who want shorter videos. I keep wanting to do those, but as you can see, it's hard for me not to shut up once I get going. But go down below to the description box and do the first of my three-step process. Listen to the Dr. Rover interview, especially those people who still believe starch is okay, because this guy was a starch boy, and he went on a 45-day juice fast, and he was on day 21. No, actually, Roba, I think he only went 30 days. I'm not, I have to, yeah, he did. I'm thinking of someone else who went a different time. But anyway, the point is, he was on day 21, he was on fire, and all these things improved in his life, and he finally realized, yes. Now, for you younger people, you're not going to see a huge improvement like that. But for people that are above 50, my God, when you do this, it's going to get your attention. That's why I'm convinced the baby boomers are the only way that we can get the tipping point. So everyone in my generation are the ones who can really wake up the planet. But you younger people can get this going too. The only problem is that you're not going to see the huge transformation that we older people are, because we've been making mistakes longer. It isn't age that ruins us, it's the way we live. And the last thing you want to do is die and have it be your mistake. The last thing you want to do is to not know what you're missing. So that's what I hope I do at every video, is to encourage you guys, if you haven't done it yet, just try this out for a week. You'll be surprised. It's worth the effort. It's a lot of effort. I know. I've done it over 1,200 days in the last 24 years. I know how much effort it takes to go into it, but it's so much worth it. And I say this over and over, when you do it, you're in for a treat.